Hello, welcome to yesterday's airlines. Time belatedly for the JC Wings July ranking announcement video. Apologies that it hasn't come earlier. I have to say that one of the reasons that I tend to delay the JC Wings releases when I'm doing these ranking videos is because you get a lot of announcements roughly around the same time at the beginning of the month, and the JC Wings ones are usually not that exciting. JC has this pattern of producing quite a diverse range of airlines, but often slightly obscure cargo carriers or governmental stuff. It just doesn't really excite me that much. And then intermixed with that is obviously future releases which may not come out for a long time. And often they utilize some of their weaker molds too. And that has kind of been the pattern for 2024 for JC Wings. It's been quite an ordinary year for them, I feel. There are high points every month, so it's not like all the releases are boring, and there are definitely exciting and interesting models here. But broadly, I would say that JC not hitting the goals that I would like them to hit. Now, I don't know how everyone else feels about that, and I don't expect my view to be the same as yours necessarily. But if you compare them to Phoenix, they're definitely not as interesting, and to be honest, the quality often isn't quite as good as well in terms of the molds that are being used, ignoring 747s obviously. And if you compare them to others, NG and Aviation 400, again, even though sometimes they're not the most exciting sets from them, the molds generally are pretty awesome, and they get them out broadly around the sort of time you'd expect, whereas sometimes with JC it can be a long time. So anyway, I'm prattling on a bit, so let's get on and see what I mean by looking at the release set this month. It's another decent sized group from JC Wings, but what is unusual about this month's set is about half of the 23 or so models announced here are actual future releases, whereas previously there's just been a trickle of future releases and a lot of releases that will be coming out almost immediately or within the next month or two. So this time round it's about half and half now-ish and who knows when-ish. So that does also change the way I'm going to do the video a little bit. But let's get on to that now, straight after you chucked a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you everyone who does, and don't forget to check me out at Yesterday Airlines on Instagram and Facebook and yesterdaysairlines.com, where I continue to post a lot of content. So now I've got that out of the way, let's get on and see what JC are offering for July. So as I said, it's kind of a half and half month of models that will be out soonish and models that are going to be out who knows. And what I'll do is I'll discuss the releases that will be out in the short term first, and then move on to the ones which could be out a long time in the future, because it does have an impact, I feel, on the scoring and what they're making. So we're going to begin as always with the Airbuses, and in the release now set there's only two, and they're both A321s. First one up is a Cathay Dragon CEO. It's registered B Hotel Tango Golf, and it's not the first time that JC Wings have announced a A321 like this, because in 2019 they made BHTF. It really wouldn't surprise me if this model was also made in 2019, has just been hanging about. It certainly looks very, very similar from the pictures I'm seeing, and arguably there's some questionable cockpit printing going on. Having said that, the old release doesn't look like a disaster, and I imagine this one won't be disastrous either. From my perspective, it's a little bit irrelevant. I've got the HBO JL Wings version, which is going to be dramatically superior. There's also an older Phoenix version floating about as well, but that's about it for Cathay Dragon A321s. Obviously, Dragon no longer exists thanks to COVID and has been merged into the Cathay Pacific. Yeah, it's a very workhorsey airline, isn't it? And release because it's been made by them and others. So that's where it's going to go. We're going to go to workhorse, and I could be really harsh and put this in the gas guzzler, sorry, but I think I'll put it into workhorse. There hasn't been one for a few years now. The second model coming up is a Condor A321, and there have been a lot of Condor A321s in recent times. This one is registered DAI Alpha Foxtrot, and what is good about this is that nobody else has made this Condor A321 before. Now, again, JC have made one very similar to it. They made AIAC in 2020, and that one was wearing the same scheme as this, except it had the heart on the tail, whereas this one has the Condor bird logo on the tail. Otherwise, the schemes are effectively the same. So again, it wouldn't surprise me if these models were made at the same time, and it's been in the warehouse for the last 4 years. And they make quite a nice companion piece to go together. And even though, again, it's not an airline that fits my collection criteria, nobody else has made this scheme. I'm not sure anyone has made the previous scheme either. Everyone's been so fixated on the stripy variants recently that it does add a little bit of interest to what is being done here. And even though the mould is not top of the class by any means, it's better than their Neo version. Yeah, you know, I'll put this one into high fire. I'm feeling generous, I feel, in relation to this model. So that's straight out of the Airbuses. Neither of those are really exciting me, but they're not awful models. They could easily both be a level lower in my rankings, but yeah, I'm going to leave them where they are, I think. Next up, we've got a couple of 737 next generations. Again, these molds are pretty mediocre. The first one up is a Series 700, it's JA02AN. I've only got a really blurry picture of this one because it also comes with a skin tag, which means the price is going to be skyrocketing up there. The mold is already really mediocre. The whole concept of having a skin tag is just pointless for me. I think it's a separate thing. They should be sold separately to the models, in my opinion. Though I get the feeling they've got some kind of deal with Aviation Tag who make these skin tags. It's going to be just pretty mediocre. And I have to say that NG Models made this same Regio aircraft in September 2022. This one is never going to come close to being as good as that one because of the mould. So, again, this one could easily go into Gas Guzzler. I'll workhorse it. Again, maybe erring on the side of caution. For me, the skin tag increasing the price, just unnecessary. It's not something I'd want anyway. But the model's going to be pretty ordinary. Yeah, I'm being a bit generous here, I feel, putting this one into Workhorse. However, my generosity has its limits, and the next model up is probably stretching those. This one is it's an older colours, 737-800 from KLM. They did release The World Is Just a Click Away version not that long ago, last year. This is the standard colours variant. I looked at the previous version and the pictures. The mould just really bothers me. I mean, it's just so old and needs replacing. And I do believe that JC are working on a replacement, but who knows when that will see the light of day. For now, they're still pushing out these variants for themselves and Gemini, and they're not very good. Now, no one else has actually made an old colours KLM 737-800, so in that sense, you know, you'd expect me to give it better scoring, but I'm just kind of tired. Tired of giving what are pretty poor models even Workhorse. I'm going to put this one in the Gas Guzzler. The mould is annoying me, to be honest. But a 737 mould that they do have, which is better, is the Max, and the next model up is a Max 8 for Malta Air, Ryanair's Maltese subsidiary. 9H Victor Uniform Alpha is the registration. I'd be more interested in this if they hadn't already made Victor Uniform Charlie in 2021. So this one's effectively, again, a copy of an earlier release, and that kind of snaps it straight into Workhorse. There was also a version made by Aero Classics. Obviously, that one is inferior because the Aero Classics Max mould is poor, let's say. Okay, now we've got a selection of 747s. None of them are really exciting me, but let's see what you guys think. First up, we've got Thai Airways International Cargo 747-400. This has got flaps up and down. It's on the new mould. It's all very good, but they've already made one in 2022. They made HSTGH, and this is HSTGJ. So it's going to be the same, except for that reg change. Really boring. And they do seem to have a real thing for Thai Airways, JC Wings. So you're just going to Workhorse it and move on. to some 747-8s, of which JC's been releasing quite a lot recently, presumably because there's now some mold competition here from NG models. This time around, we've got some non-interactive versions of models that they've previously made interactive versions for, and that applies to 2 of the 3 here, including the first one, which is N747EX. It's wearing the house colours. They've previously made N50217, and that was interactive. So this is good because they're providing an alternative. I know some collectors really don't like the interactive, and they'd like to have a standard version as well to choose from, and belatedly JC, or 4 years later actually in this case, JC is providing them with that option. So that is nice, and I don't think this scheme has been made previously by others. So those things are good. The mould has some limitations around the hump, doesn't it? But still it's okay. I'll put this one in the high flyer, I think. Next up is a model that hasn't been made by anyone else yet. It's an Atlas Air 747-8 freighter, N859 Golf Tango. Again, don't think this has been made by anyone, but the scheme is kind of bland because it's basically just an entirely white aircraft with Atlas Air titles on it. However, if you're an Atlas collector, then you'll probably be pretty pleased with this. There's not a lot more to say. I'm going to put this one in high flyer as well. And last up, we've got another model which has been made as interactive version before, and indeed I own the interactive version of this. It's the Hong Kong Trader Cathay Pacific Cargo BLJ Alpha. So again, if you didn't like the interactive version, which was released in 2021, then now in 2024 you've got the opportunity to have a non-interactive version from JC. Now I'm pretty sure this model's been made previously, possibly by Phoenix. I'm not entirely certain, to be honest. I'm struggling to find any record of that, and it does look like Cathay Pacific Cargo has had a lot of 747-8 freighters from JC Wings. In fact, they've had made at least 6 others previously. But it's a nice scheme. I really like the interactive version, so it doesn't bother me, but maybe some people, I know some people in fact, don't. So yeah, I'll put this one in high flyer as well, but I'm being quite generous on feels. And my generosity, again, though it has its limits, I'm trying not to be negative in these videos. And the next release, the next model, kind of illustrates that, because I really like the concept here, and even some of the finishing in the pictures looks good, but at the same time, the mould. This one is a 767-400, and now we all know, and I've talked about it a lot, that Gemini and JC introduced a new 767-400 way before Panda and NG got to theirs, but their version is distinctly inferior for a whole variety of reasons. The undercarriage, especially at the front and the back, but also, you know, kind of lazy finishing at the tail cone, lazy finishing around the engines, just lazy, really, finishing in general, the wing height and that kind of stuff. This one in the Bahraini Royal Flight colours, A9 Charlie Hotel Mike Hotel. It's one of the few models this month that we've actually got good pictures for, and it does look quite good. The scheme and everything looks really nice. It's just I struggle to get over the mould. It just doesn't look much like a 767-400. It's like a 767. You know how people lower their cars, which I always hate. Always think it looks stupid. Well, this looks like a 767 which has been lowered. The undercarriage just looks way too low, and it really does impact the look of the mould for me. I'm still going to put this in high flyer, even though I probably shouldn't. It is unique, obviously, and no one else has made it. That brings us out of the Boeings, and we've got 3 more models to discuss in the soon-to-be-released batch. The first one up is an Antonov 32, and it's really good to see at least one more use of this model, because so far there's only been a single release. This one is in CCCP 46961 is the reg. It's wearing a scheme which I believe the early prototype AN32s wore in the late 1970s. However, it is not the prototype as far as I understand it, because the reg of the prototype was different, and when it was displayed at Paris it had different titles as well. It had like a big number on the front. It was a 347 or something like that. So it's not that aircraft. And I haven't actually found a picture of this particular frame in the book that I've got anyway. Which talks about Antonov twins. So, 342 was the number, sorry, that it had on the front of it. But it doesn't matter. It's the same scheme. It's a kind of like a sub-Aeroflot scheme. I don't think Aeroflot or even the Russian Air Force really operated any Antonov 32s, and they weren't really interested in them until towards the end of the Soviet Union. So I'm not totally sure how many of them got into service. Mostly A32s were serving abroad, it seems. But anyway, regardless of all of that, it's nice to see this mould being used. It's a lovely little mould. The scheme looks really nice. And the limited picture that I've got here makes the model look really good as well. I think I probably will try and get this one because it certainly fits more my scheme than the previous release, which is in the MIG house colours. And yeah, there's not much more to say. Excellent mould, excellent release. Great to see some diversity. And this one, as you can tell by me talking it up, is one that I think should be supersonic. And the first supersonic this month. And there's a substantial distance between this supersonic and the models I've been putting into high flyer, to be honest. Back down to earth somewhat with the next model though. It's a TriStar, and the TriStar molds that JC and Gemini use is not great, mainly again because the undercarriage is too short. This one's in the colours of Dragonair, VRHM Whiskey. It's annoying that NG Models have not released this livery on a Dragonair TriStar. Really annoying. And again, that's a different story, I guess, me complaining about their NG's use of the TriStar mold. But yeah, it's disappointing. But this isn't the first time that JC Wings have made this scheme on a TriStar. I think it may be the third time they've made it. And, you know, all of these things together, the ordinariness of the mold, the fact they've made it already, and the fact that I'd much prefer to get one from NG just makes me want to workhorse this one. And that just leaves us a single model left this month, a quite un-JC-like release. It is a MD-80. It is in the colours of Transworld Airlines. It is the Wings of Pride MD-80 after it was repainted into kind of standardy TWA colours. So it's got the globe scheme with some extra logos, but it's not the full over red version. Great choice. Great choice. But much like I said in the Gemini video, it's perhaps no longer the case that these immediately get into supersonic because the mould and the photos, again, got good photos here. The photos kind of illustrate the weaknesses of the mould, especially at the front. And, you know, even at distance, it looks quite good. Close up, the front of it is kind of And now with the NG do have an NDA, you'd hope they start getting around to releasing these kind of models. So I'm not entirely sure whether I'll get this one. I'm kind of on the fence. I'm kind of moving towards not, actually. And yeah, I think I'm just going to put this one in to high flyer and not into supersonic, just because of that aspect of it. I mean, it's nice, but it isn't that nice. And actually, as we know, Gemini have made a version of this where in the standard colours, and they made it only last year, so it's not that long ago. And the difference between the Wings of Pride version and the standard scheme is really just a couple of small stickers, and obviously the reg is different this time. It's EIBWD. So yeah, good but not great, I think myself. Okay, and that rounds up the models which will be released within the next, well, you're never quite certain, but probably within the next 2 to 3 months is generally the way JC releases. They'll get to your retailer probably September, October time, I'd guess. Now there's a lot of future releases to discuss, so let's move on and get into those as well. Several of these, as I've already mentioned in other videos, are being made by other brands, so that definitely has an impact, but some of them are not, especially the narrow bodies, and they're the ones we're going to begin with. So first up, we've got a SAS A320ceo OYKAR. It's wearing the previous SAS scheme, not the one from the 80s, but the blue tail, orange engines. This has been made by Aero Classics a couple of times. Even one of them had a Danish reg, like this one does. The Aero Classics A320 is better. Certainly was better back when they were made. It's not thrilling me, to be honest, this one. I'm sure it'll be okay-ish, but who knows when it's going to get released, and it's pretty mediocre. I'm going to put it into Workhorse. Next up, we've got another CEO. This one's an A321, though. This one's in the colours of MNG Airlines of Turkey, one of those you know, as I mentioned at the start, cargo airlines that JC seems to think sell and produce lots of. The scheme is quite nice, and it's the first MNG releases since those that series of A300s, I think, that were made by JetX. Oh no, and also, sorry, apologies, JC Wings have made an A330-200 freighter too. So there've now been 4 releases for MNG. But I'd be surprised if anyone's really collecting MNG airlines, even though the scheme here is actually quite nice. It's got a green version of their standard scheme. Yeah, there's not much more to say about it. I'm going to put this one on the high fly because it's not been made before. The scheme's quite nice. The mould is meh, but it could be worse. However, next up is a model which should be really nice, and if it's made by others, then I imagine it will be. But in this case, because it's made by JC on their A321neo mould, I seriously doubt it will be. This one is HALGI, and the aircraft is wearing what is quite an attractive Olympics scheme for Wizz Air for the Hungarian team at the Olympics, with a golden tail. I'm not sure it really goes with the pink, but could be worse. But the mould for this one is just, you know, the engines and the way they never look good. I'm just going to put this one into Gas Guzzler, I think, because of those elements, and because who knows when it's going to be released anyway. I mean, JC Wings, you can't rely on them to get stuff out in a sensible timescale. The last Airbus for the future releases is the Ethiopian A350-1000 ETBAW. Discussed this one a lot already, being released by Aviation 400 and Phoenix. And I don't see any reason to really wait around for this version, which will presumably be out after those two. I'm just going to put this one into Workhorse and move on to the Boeings, which consist of a couple of 737s and then a series of models made by everyone else already. The first one is a Varig 737-200, so this is quite an unusual release from JC because it's classic. That would make me more excited usually, except that here again the mould that they're using is that really ancient 737-200 that Gemini had right at the beginning of the Dawn of 400 scale. There have already been Aeroclassics versions that are much better than this. In fact, there were Aeroclassics versions that are much better than this made a long, long time ago. And there's even a Varig one dating from 2003, which admittedly might be a zinc rotter. But there's certainly been one made in 2020 by Aeroclassics. I own that one. It's going to be much better than this one. I know they're hard to find, but the mould here is just meh. You know, I'll Workhorse it. The other 737, however, is a highlight for me of the month. Interesting airline, nice scheme, good mould, and they're the combinations really that you need to get a good grade in these videos. This one is of Arajet of the Dominican Republic, and the aircraft is got, well, they've already got a nice scheme, Arajet, because they've got this lovely macaw logo or parrot logo on the tail, but this one also has a banner style Dominican flag on it, which looks really cool. This one should be super nice. I can't see other brands making it, to be honest, and it makes it more interesting as well. Worth waiting for because the mould is also good, and this one I think deserves some supersonic love. So finally, there's another model to get up to the top of the rankings here to go with that Antonov, but only the two so far. In fact, only the two really, because the other models that we've got here are all models that are being released by others and have been announced by others. And when you look at that and then combine the wait times for JC Wings, and it does knock the scores somewhat. So we've got the Air Canada Go 777 300ER CFIT Whiskey, again announced by AV400 and Phoenix. This one will be better than the Phoenix version, and probably about as good, maybe even better than the AV400. And I'll put it into High Flyer, but at the same time, who knows when it's going to come out. Then we've got some not particularly exciting 787s. We've got the Japan Airlines in that scheme that I've already discussed twice before. I'm just going to put that in Workhorse the same way I did with the others. And we've got the Qantas also wearing the Olympic scheme, the Go Australia colours, which again, you know, it's just not really exciting me at all, I have to say. In the sense that everyone else has renounced it. This one again will be good. I'll put it into High Flyer because it will be good if they get it out in time, and it will be competitive. But you've already got an AV400 and a Phoenix versions coming, so you know that's a lot of competition. And actually, lastly, a model I've left off the tier maker list here. Apologies. is the Austrian 787, which again has all the same issues as that Qantas one. Who knows when it's going to be out, and it has been announced by, in this case, AB400, I think. So again, it's probably a high flyer model, but you know, it would be more of a high flyer if it was going to be released next month. But as it is, none of these models are going to be released next month. The earliest ones are going to get out in 2 or 3 months, it seems. So it does detract somewhat from that. Now, another model which I should mention, which again I've not got on the tier maker list here, is that JC has very recently announced that we're making a 747 house colours 747-100 to combat the NG light version. That one's going to come with GSE as well, I believe. It's also to combat the HX models version, which has been announced. So again, there's a lot of competition here going on to make the same model. Presumably they're going to use the Big Bird mould for their release, which is nice, but obviously very dated too. I'm not really sure what to make of it, to be honest. The NG version obviously has issues, quite substantial ones, as I reviewed at the site. HX Models 1, yet to be seen. And this one, who knows? The JC GSE they're going to put with it is pretty mediocre, so I wouldn't buy it based off of that. Yeah, I'm not really sure what to do. Wait and see is my suggestion for that one. I'm not going to bother ranking it in the vid. So that is the release set for this month from JC Wings. Basically, it's pretty underwhelming. There's a lot of pretty mediocre models here, some of which I've got in Workhorse I could easily put in the gas guzzler. Some of the ones in High Fly I could easily put into Workhorse, to be honest. If I was just feeling a little bit meaner today, I could easily drop models like that Thomas Cook, the Condor, down into Workhorse, and I could easily drop some of the models like the Dragonair TriStar from Workhorse down to gas guzzler. I'm not going to do that, but you can see that there's some quality limits based mainly around the molds that are being used here, because the 737 NG molds, the A320-21 molds, the MD-80, the TriStar, and that 767-400, they're all really ordinary molds. And the subject matter isn't particularly exciting either. So not a great month, actually. But on the plus side, there is at least one model I'm definitely going to get, and that'll be the Antonov. So that, at least for me, adds a little bit of something to the month. As always, guys, keen to hear what your thoughts are on this month's JC Wings announcements. Interested also to understand how frustrated you are with the way they go about releasing and this kind of concept of future releases. I mean, there's a lot this month, and you've got to try and keep track of those over time. It's hard. So yeah, interested to know what you guys think about that. But still waiting for some more interest from JC Wings and for 2024 to get started. And we're 7 months through the year, and really it's all been pretty ordinary to date for them. So don't think JC are going to be getting any prizes for their release sets for this year from me, at least if it continues like this. Okay guys, well, I'll see you at the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Until then, goodbye.